I'm currently working on Chopin's Etude Opus 25 number 5, and the goal I have for the next half an hour is to work on one little bit of the piece that is from bar 122 till the end of the piece. But I don't want to go through it from bar 122 to the end and just work on multiple times. I have specific targets, specific bars which I'm finding more difficult than the rest, which I'm going to spend a little more time on. So, the first thing I want to spend time on, and I think this is probably the hardest bit I'm finding from this entire section, is to get the jump from bars the jump in bar 124. That's this. So, that's one. That's the right hand jump and the left hand jump as well. That's wrong. Yeah. So as you can see, I didn't play either the right hand or the left hand correctly because I haven't worked on that section much. I just about know the notes there. So the first thing I'm going to start off with is getting that jump. My goal is to be able to play it without tension. So even if I don't get the notes accurately, even if I practice it for even, let's say, 10 minutes on just this one bar, that's perfectly fine. I'm probably not going to go up to 10 minutes of practice for just that one bar. But my goal is every time I play it, I shouldn't feel tension. So, accuracy of notes is not as important for me, just to get the jump without tension. Okay, I did notice that I'm jumping right up to F multiple times. Maybe that's the span that is most comfortable for me. So I'm going to see if I can alter the manner in which I jump without again bringing in any tension, but to see if the arc I'm kind of forming reduces just so that I'm landing a note before. Just a slight bit, I want to reduce the curve that I'm forming. That's a lot better. One of the reasons I'm not really looking at where I'm jumping to is because the left hand has a jump as well. So I'm going to see if I can try and get both the hands jumps without looking, so that ultimately, if I have to just focus on one of the two hands, it'll be much easier. So what I just did there was I also tried to practice it reverse. This isn't something I've done too much of in the past, but I do hear it helps. So I just decided to give it a try. Another thing I've worked on before, and again, I'm not 100% sure whether this actually has helped or not. I really didn't have any way of measuring. Is if you have a certain chord, you reduce it by a semitone, and then you also reduce the last note by a semitone. So let's say from F sharp, C sharp, F sharp, I go to F, C, F, and then instead of playing E, I'm playing E flat. So again, I have no idea if this helps or not. It's just that in the past, I've done it for certain other tricky passages. Um, I suppose it could help because you're kind of cementing muscle memory and kind of learning a distance that you need to jump. But I don't know. whether it helps or not. So let me go again with that passage, just the right hand, not passage, just the one bar. Again, I'm quite short. I'm landing on the D instead of E. Now I struck the F the first time, so again D. That was good. Good. Um, I did play it incorrectly quite a few times. This isn't something I want to over practice as well. So I'm going to go maybe 8 more times. If I don't get it correctly all 8 times, that's perfectly fine. And then I'm going to move on to the left hand. Sometimes I realize what happens is if you try to practice something on a certain day and you don't get it correctly, miraculously the next day you come to it, you kind of able to do it a lot more easily. I don't know why it happens. Maybe something that just happens in your brain overnight. But I'm going to work on it for I'm going to play it 8 more times and then move on to the left hand. Okay, that was definitely more than 8 times, and I think I got it wrong more number of times than I got it right. But like I mentioned earlier, I'm just going to move on to the left hand for now. If tomorrow I haven't been able to sort out this jump, I will figure out what to do. Maybe practice it a little more than I just did at this point. But for now, I'm going to go on to the left hand. There's also a bit of a stretch in the left hand, which I'm not finding particularly easy. Um okay, one thing that might help me is rather than combining the two, which is playing this and adding that note in, I'll separate them out into two different elements. One is this stretch, and then the second one is that jump. So first I'm going to work on the jump. So what I'm going to do is jump from E, which is the last note of the rolled chord, and then jump from that E to the A sharp. So see if I can get it. Every time I get it wrong, it's also important for me to remind myself not to be afraid or hold back uh, in order to get the note more accurately, because it can affect me later on. What I mean is that, let's say I'm playing this jump, instead of being as free as possible and reaching out to the wrong note as many times as I need to, uh, if I'm sort of going to start holding tension just to make sure that I strike the right note, that fear kind of gets recorded into your muscle memory, and then later on becomes fairly difficult to change. So as of now, I'm gonna, even again, like the right hand, as many times as I need, I'm gonna play it and see, even if I play wrong notes, that's perfectly fine. I'm gonna go a few more times and then count. uh, Maybe I'm gonna play this another 8 times and then add in the rolled chord, or just work on the rolled chord. I think that might have been more than 8 times. Again, I did not get it right too many times, but I'm going to move on to the rolled chord. This chord is a little tricky for me because I feel this isn't the first piece where I'm feeling it, but I feel where I have a interval of, let's say, a third or more, especially when it's combined with the a black and white note kind of interval. Like for example, in this case, it's a A sharp to an E. So which is it's B flat to, sorry, A sharp to E will be a diminished fifth, so compound diminished fifth interval. I have found myself struggling a bit with these, uh, you know, long chords that stretch across a fair space. Uh, Especially on my piano, where I feel like a fingernail gets stuck between the keys. So this is something I want to figure out how to work on. The other method, which I've done just slightly before, was reducing each note by a semitone so that your hand kind of gets used to the chord shape, or rather moving a distance, but it can help to sort of lengthen your fingers if you don't constantly play just the same chord over and over again. So in this case, it's A sharp, F sharp, E. So I'm going to change it to A, F, E flat. In fact, I'm finding the lowered semitone even more difficult. I'm gonna try increasing it by a semitone and see how that works. So that would be let me keep it to that for now with the stretch, and I'm gonna add in the stretch to the jump. And I might just leave that till there because I can feel a slight bit of tension creeping in. This definitely does not seem like an easy bar to play, which means I'm just going to work on it more often because the rest of this page and the previous page seem fairly okay now for me, but it's these bits towards the end which I'm finding fairly challenging. So I'm going to leave bar 124 till there. Now I'm going to work on the trill which comes towards the end. So it's where you hold down a chord and then it's a two-handed trill. I tend to not be good at two-handed trills. My left hand slacks compared to the right, which I'm sure is the case for a lot of people. But I'm just going to work on a few different strategies which I think can help with a two-handed trill. I did do these in the past and I'm not sure how much they helped me, but I'm sure they helped me to some extent at least. I'm going to start off with those exercises. So the first thing to do is just keep your hands in position and then do three notes each time. In basically, I'm splitting up the drill into groups of three notes. So four notes. So five notes. And now just random variations of these notes, but making sure that I sync both hands. Uh, with trills, it's not just important to move your fingers, but also to try and incorporate wrist movements or forearm movements where required. So I'm gonna see if there's a way for me to play hands individually and see if there's any additional movement I can make that can make the trill can increase the speed of the trill when I need to and also make it more tension free. slight pulsing sort of movement up and down with this drill. I don't know if it's going to help me or not, or whether it's just going to sort of become too much of a movement at that point where my fingers might just be able to do a good enough job, because I am sort of bouncing my entire hand to make that movement, which could be a little inefficient for a trill. But what I'm going to do is I'll try it a few times just to sort of tell my body that that movement is possible if it needs to incorporate it at a faster speed. It is quite an inconvenient turn to be playing a trill with. But again, I'm going to leave this still here. I don't know to what extent I'm going to have to incorporate wrist movements or any other forearm movements in order to make this trill possible at a faster tempo. I'm now going to go on to bar 122 to 123. So beginning of 122 till the end of 123. I want to see if I can play those groups of notes faster. Yeah, it is pretty slow, and I'm not able to strike most notes in the left hand. So I'm going to try hands separately a few times and then work on it together. I'm playing it a combination of fast and slow, because fast will remind me what I need technique wise to get it up to a good speed, and slow will remind me to keep tension off, but also will sort of solidify the notes into my memory better. There's a lot more clarity that comes with playing slowly. So I'm basically skipping the second note of each group, the individual notes, just to see if I can move through these faster. Of course, I'm going to try to move through just the individual notes fast as well. That's it. The thumbs are moving a lot faster than the whole chord. So I'm just going to work on the whole chord more.